Hello, friends and fellow board gamers. Welcome back to Board Games with Rob. In this video, I am going to be doing an overview and a high-level overview and review of a game that I got recently at Gen Con and one that I've gotten to the table a number of times. And I say high level because it is a heavy weighted game. If we look over here at Board Game Geek's entry, it's weighted at a 3.67 out of 5. It's a Euro game and it's by Daniel Tascini and Antonio Petrelli, and from one of my favorite board game publishers, Board and Dice. Now, they're typically renowned for doing a lot of heavier weight games and a lot of Tascini games in that, proverbial T lineup, right? So like Teotihuacan, and anyway, this one is Tianxia, if I'm pronouncing that right. In fact, they almost didn't have it at Gen Con from what I understand. I remember trying to find out whether or not Board and Dice had an entry and we're going to be there. They typically always are. But they didn't have any entry, and I spoke to them, and that's because they weren't 100% sure that their games were going to make it. And thankfully they did, kind of at the last minute, and this was their big release at Gen Con that I was able to get my hands on and get it to the table. So how does it play? Do I like it? Do I like it more than some of the other designs from them? Let's go to the table. Again, let's do a high-level overview of how this game plays, and then we'll come back up here and I'll tell you what my thoughts are. All right, so I can't obviously fit this board in my camera view. What I've done is kind of off or below, I've done a screenshot of the bottom half of this board, which is cut off down here, which is mainly tracks. Tascini is known for incorporating tracks in all of his games, and so I didn't feel like focusing much on that. I will touch on the tracks and some of the stuff down below, bonuses and what have you, in player order, but a lot of the meat is going to be happening in the top half of the board. So let's start out by talking about the different resources you'll have in the game, and there's 7 different types, and they kind of break it down into what they call resources and goods, and there's 3 of each different type here. You'll have that's rice, wood, and stone in the top. And you can tell the difference because those are the ones that have bags. Those are the resources. And then you have 3 different types of goods there. If I can get my hand the right way, you've got jewelry, silk, and crowns. So those are the main ones. And then, of course, you're going to have coins in different denominations throughout the game. And after I've kind of given you a high level of the game, I'll kind of explain what goods are focused on. But really what you're trying to do, of course, over the duration of the game, of course, is get victory points. And you're going to do that by taking a bunch of different actions out here and trading goods and what have you. But there's this other mechanic that is going to happen where you're going to have invaders coming down and possibly invading the buildings that make up your worker action spots. A friend of mine likened it to having this like Space Invaders feel, where they're kind of boom, 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 marching down, and you're trying to take care of them before they get down here, because if they get past a certain spot, then they will start damaging buildings and possibly taking out your governors, which are your workers that you've placed out there. So there's this tension, and that's, I guess, what sets this game apart from a lot of the others, is there's this tension as to, do I reinforce and protect the cities from those invaders, or do I focus more in engine building? And you've got 4 different regions on the board and thus 4 different tracks. And so you might be centered in one particular region and your opponent over in another, or maybe you're both jointly in one. And so you're like, I've got enough defense over here. I'm not going to really worry about them. Let them build, tear down their wall. But there is points to be had if you participate in defending the wall, and therein lies another dilemma. Do I just risk the opponents getting all the points for defending the wall? There's so many tense decisions to make in here that really kind of makes this a unique gameplay. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. You're really going to have these tiles that are set out, and each one is a color of the track. You have 4 tracks down below. You've got a blue, a white, a red, and a black. And then this one here is multicolor. If you choose this section over here, then you'll be able to go up any of the tracks. It serves as kind of like a wild. So really, all you're going to be doing on your turn is placing out 3 different actions. You'll have 3 actions, and you can place them anywhere in any one of these different regions. I'll talk about them briefly. Free actions, you can go ahead and put people onto these boats to get resources, and there's a number of other kind of free actions you can take, but the meat of it is putting pawns out onto these worker placement spots, and these are all randomly placed out. So let's talk about them. They're all going to have 2 different sides. This is a worker placement action, and you can place your disc on either side, and it's associated with a particular region and actions that you can do in that particular region. So any action area that you pick may have different types of actions that you'll have embedded in the circle or attached to the circle. So for example, here I could train a stone for a jewelry and do that up to 4 times. And then I could do I could get a good, any one of the 3 types of goods. What each one of these sections will have is the ability to take the action or go up the track matching the flags. So if I went in this circle, I'd be able to go up the black track, of here the white, red, and so on and so forth. And all of those tracks are going to have bonuses. So you have this combo type feeling aspect of games typical of Tascini. So primarily, these 3 spots are going to be about trading and getting some goods. This spot here, as well as this side of this area, is going to be about doing the ship actions and fulfilling orders, and I'll explain that here in a second. And then this action here is going to be about either putting up soldiers, walls, or towers, which is going to help protect these soldiers that are coming down. Now, the first round, they will just all start at a beginning spot. I'll talk about how that will increase over the course of the game. But it's really that simple. You're either doing some sort of trading, getting some goods, or you're doing some fulfillment here, or you're building up defenses. Now, one of the other things that you'll be able to do in all of these sections is place one of your governors, and you're going to have these workers that will mean different things depending upon where they are in the board. And so what you'll be able to do is in whatever section you're in, if you pay the price up top, in this case it's 2 wood, then you get to place one of your governors in that area. And there's going to be 2 different types. There'll be one, the black roof are one-time bonuses that you'll get, and then the reds are typically some kind of an ongoing ability that may trigger during certain phases. And then you'll get this one-time bonus tile, and they'll be spaced. Now, this is the 4 or 5 player game, so there's going to be room for additional workers out here to place. But that is one of the things that you'll be able to do, and let me say that it will increase the cost. The first one is just the cost of the wood, but then the next 2 you're going to have to pay an increasing cost to put one of their workers or governors out on that building. Only the first person to go there will get this tile, and then that will give them a certain benefit. And you can do that in each of the cities. So that's one of the extra things that you can do by placing your worker, is by choosing to govern one of those buildings. Over in the shipping area, there's these different ports, and each of these, and these are dual, they kind of puzzly together, and there's a whole stack of these bottom of the boats and the masts, which tell you what you're trying to deliver. The top half of the mast will have some sort of option or goal that you're trying to get. So you're trying to deliver. And if you notice, each of these have a random good. So wherever you see this crate, it means that they're going to want whatever this random good is, and then something else. So in this case, a silk, and whatever the random good is, which is another silk. And if you do that, then you get a reward for doing that, and then you pick one of the bottom rewards also, but then you cover that up and it's not available to the next person that would take a shipping action. You would go ahead and place this token out. I call it the pretzel. It looks like a pretzel, but it's cloth. You'll just place that showing that you did a delivery in that area. This city has 2 options to pick from, and then the others each have a single. So you'll be fulfilling demand, and at the end of the turn or at the end of the round, a couple ships will be removed, and then these will slide up, and you'll have ever-changing ships coming on. And then on the other side over here, that's again where you're going to take these meeples, or these workers. I say workers, they're whatever area that they're in, they're that. So, if they're here, they're a governor. If they're here, they're a soldier. And you will either use your rice to feed the soldiers, and that's where you'll put them out in these spots here, and I'm going to swap in here the player board, and each person will have a player board, and you can see there these walls and towers. So the other section is, if I'm paying stone, then I can build a wall in that area, and there's room for 4 walls. And you can have any amount of walls in an area. You can share them with other people. There is only one spot, however, for a tower. And the tower is going to give you extra strength towards defending. That's what you're doing in this section. You're either training soldiers and putting them out, or putting out walls or towers. And that's pretty much the top half of the board, is that you'll be taking actions and possibly putting governors, and then defending the wall against the enemy that's going to be coming down, and then triggering the benefits of below, the going on the particular tracks that you'll have down there. So another action you can do is place a merchant into the boat and gain the resource that is down there. So you've got the rice, you've got the wood, and the stone. It will get you a resource immediately, and then for every merchant that you have on a boat in between rounds, you'll get another resource at that time. However, in the 1 to 3 player game, you're going to have these neutral workers that are going to come in between rounds and be added to the back of the boat. There's only room for 3 people on this boat, as you can see by that. And if you get pushed off of the boat, then, which you can do, then you'll lose out on getting that resource. You can always put somebody back, but you're limited on the amount of these tokens that you have. But then that's where you can place that onto one of these spaces here to trigger another action, which is free. You just remove that and you will trigger whatever the action is here. So in this case, if I had 2 here, I could, as a free action, take these off. And in this particular case, I could get 2 of any of the resources that you have available. So other than that, you're just going to be placing 3 discs per turn in turn order. And then once everybody has passed, that will trigger the end of the round. There'll be some maintenance, and then you'll restart. You'll keep going over 4 rounds. That is tracked at the bottom, which you can see in the picture down below. At the very bottom, you're going to have 4 different sets of bonus tiles, 1 for each round, and you'll place those out. And the first person to pass will be the first to pick one of those particular bonus tiles. And then there on the left, you can see a track right beside the main building, which is or right above the building, I'm sorry, which maintains your player order. So the game does come with a deck of cards, and everybody is going to get a number of them at the beginning of the game. And there are a couple of rare ways to get additional cards, which are twofold. They will have resources at the top of the card, and at any time as a free action, you can cash a card in to get those resources. And I will say resources are pretty tight, and that's one of the the ways that you can get resources on the fly. Or at the bottom of the card, there'll be an end of game scoring ability that you'll get again at the end of the game. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention is that as you go up the tracks, there's going to be a number of tiles that are called jade idols, and there's a number of different ones, and they do have a rarity, and these are going to be important because one of the tracks on your board is going to house these idols, and as you can probably see, you can get a ton of points. They have to be unique on your board, but as you can see, if you have all six different types, then that's worth 21 points at the end of the game. It goes from 1 and ramps up pretty quick. Everybody is going to have a beginning starting resource tile, and it's an income tile. It'll generate income. In this particular case, I would be able to go up any of the tracks at the between round. And each board, I should say, is unique. It's asymmetric. They're going to have different powers on there for each player. Now, I said I would talk about the mechanic that sets this apart from a lot of the other games they've got, and that's this enemy track. And so every enemy is going to start at the top of this track and have a path that they're going to go down. Now, they're going to start at the top, and then there's a counter that says what their strength is. So they're all going to start at a 5 strength. Yours is going to be 0. So at the beginning, you don't have to worry about it. But if they ever get down to the X on the path, that's going to trigger an attack phase. And what you're going to do is count up all of your defending people that you have or structures. Each soldier is worth 1 defense. Each wall is worth 1 defense. Each tower is worth 2. So you would take those, you'd subtract it from whatever the power is of the enemy, and if it is anything but 0, then then bad things will happen. You'll essentially, and I should say that the walls will stay up in the tower, but you will lose soldiers if they're used to bring that attack strength down. You'll start losing them, which isn't that bad. They can, well, yeah, stinks to be a soldier, right? But at least this enemy doesn't start attacking people. If this is anything but 0 or below 0, then the enemy will then go to the very first building and will destroy any governor or remove any governor that would happen to be in there. And then there's another negative amount that it will reduce, and each building has a negative amount until if it's so high that you still can't, like this area is a -1, -2, and a -3, if you still haven't been able to knock that enemy out, then everybody in the game will suffer some penalty down here, which is victory point loss and or a money loss. Between each round, you will have a random deck of cards. There's an easy stack and a difficult stack. You'll see at the top the amount of spaces that each enemy will travel, and then the amount of strength that they will go up. You'll be drawing one of these at the beginning of each round, and so these soldiers are going to eventually these enemies are eventually going to get to the bottom of the track, and they are going to go up. So after 4 rounds, you will count up your victory points and calculate any of those end game scoring cards that you may or may not have. I've always blown through mine for the resources, and then the person that has the most victory points will win the game. All right, folks, so there's a lot to this game, and it's going to have a lot of the familiar feels of the T line of games from that Board and Dice is well known for putting out from Tascini. The main difference here, of course, is going to be that enemy track and the different decisions that it poses with regards to, do I build up those defenses? Do I get in that scoring? Or do I protect, or do I go and try and continue building my engine? Do I focus on going up the different tracks? There's a lot of different decisions to make here, and it's a tight balance as to which one of those you're going to pick and focus on. You're going to have to play this a couple times before you understand where that balance is, and do I just put up maybe in a soldier just to get involved in a combat? Do I not engage in particular actions or put governors in on one side of the map because I don't want to risk having to defend it? There's just a lot of different decisions that you won't understand. Well, I didn't understand the complexity of how those all relate to one another until I played the game. I would rate this an 8. I really like this game. I like those decision-making opportunities, and I like having different things to focus on. I will say the resources in this is extremely tight. You don't get a lot, and you are one of the neat dilemmas that you're going to focus on early on is when do I take those free actions by putting people on a boat? And what I mean by that is the first person to pass is going to get the first hand, their first dibs on some of those bonus tiles that are presented. So although it's a free action, you don't have to spend a token to get in on put your people on your merchants on those boats. It is going to take up one of your rounds or one of your actions. And so you're left with discs to take actions. You're getting on that boat, but somebody else might end their turn first because of that and be able to steal that token, that bonus token that you're wanting. So therein lies a little bit of tension, is how much time do I spend building up that engine of putting people on the boat? And shoot, you might be okay, think you're okay, and then somebody bumps you off the boat, and it's like, oh no, now I got to go put somebody back on there. I said that I would talk about the different types of resources and how they figure in over the play. I will say that wood is primarily used for installing governors into those buildings out into the worker action regions that you have. Stone is primarily used for building the walls and the towers, and then rice primarily for training your workers, feeding your workers to get them out. All the other goods are primarily for trading on the boats and being able to fulfill those demands. So this is a game that suffers from very tight resource management, which is an element that thrills certain people, and I don't like there's so much that I have to focus on this game that I don't also like having to worry about how I'm going to get my resources to be able to do all these things. I have enough worry about, do I have to go and defend this area? Do I want to waste this action just so I can get a soldier in there so I at least don't score zero? Oh, wait, now he's there too, or she's there too. Now I got to get two soldiers in there so I'm at least getting second place. Or, oh my gosh, this soldier came all the way down this track because of that card pool, and now I got to put all of my resources into defending that area that I've got a lot of governors in. And you have to build that up, because one thing I didn't mention is when you place your action disc there, you can take it again, but you're going to have to pay a coin for every single action token that's in that stack. So to be able to put out multiple soldiers or multiple walls is going to cost you even more over the course of the game. So there's a lot going on in this game, and I rated it an 8, which is good for me. I like heavy Euro games. I love Tascini's games. I love board and dice. I just rated a little bit lower because there was just so much, I think, to worry about, and there's not a lot. We see a lot of tech tracks in a lot of their games. We see a lot of the worker placement type things. There's nothing really being reinvented here other than that enemy marching down those tracks. That is really neat and adds a unique aspect to this game that I would highly encourage you to get in a play, if not own the game. It's something that is different that I haven't seen done before. So folks, that's Tianxia, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. What are some of your favorite Tascini games, or what are your favorite T lineup of games? What do you like? Board and Dice produces a lot of Euro style games that are not designed by Tascini. They've just announced a huge gamut of releases that they're going to be coming out with. What's your favorite Board and Dice game? Do you like heavy or tight resource games? And what do you think about this mechanic of the soldiers coming down in this particular game? Is that enough to make this different for you and want to try it out? Let me know. But more than anything, thanks for watching. Have fun gaming and be nice to one another. Bye-bye.